Young Thug was reportedly free today after pleading guilty on a number of charges. Make sure you watch to the end, cause he also requested to be around Gunna. Let's get into it. Although Thug was sentenced to 40 years for his guilty plea and a number of related gang charges in the state of Georgia RICO case, he is only to serve 5 years. Now what does that mean? Young Thug entered his plea under what is called a binder's plea. This means you plead guilty to the judge without a set deal from the state. The judge can sentence you to any punishment up to the statutory maximum for that crime. The DA and the defendant both present recommended sentences to the court in which the judge has the discretion to impose a reasonable punishment that he or she feels is punishable within the guidelines of the law. So in simplest terms, Thug's 40-year sentence was split up. 15 years is to be served on probation and the other 5 years is basically split. 2 years in which he already served and the other 3 years would just be hanging over his head until the end of his probation. Now the other 20 years on the back end will also be hanging over his head, and he will have to serve that if he don't complete the 15 years of probation. Now, despite all of that, the judge did decide to let Thug free.
Was willing to give a sentence that permitted Mr. Williams to walk out of the door today, and therefore does not seem to be particularly worried that Mr. Williams, if on the streets, would be a danger to society. I'm taking that into consideration in crafting my sentence. So essentially, the total sentence is 40 years to serve the first 5 years in prison, but commuted to the time that you have already served, followed by 15 years on probation, followed then by the backloaded 20 years, which can be served in custody and will be served in custody if you are not successful on your probation. If you are successful in completing your 15 years probation, that will be commuted to time served.
Now, I do want to shed light on the strict probation stipulations and what's to expect from Thug, especially music. Young Thug probation stipulations require him to refrain from using any gang or gangster-like raps in his music. This could possibly alter the way we consume Thug as an artist. He would literally have to rebrand himself. His probation also requires that he refrain from living in Atlanta, in which Thug stated he would be residing in LA. What I find interesting though is Thug's request to be around Gunna for the sake of making music, despite the allegations of Gunna telling on the case. Let's check it out.
Mr. Williams can have no contact with any of the supposed victims, and there was an Exhibit A attached to the state's proposed plea agreement, negotiated plea agreement that was sent to you, so we adopt that Exhibit A, but we can give it to the court if you need those names. And Mr. Williams have no contact with any of the co-defendants in this indictment, with the exception of Mr. Quantavious Greer, that is his biological brother, as well as Mr. Sergio Kitchens. He is a phenomenal artist. He goes performer known as Gunna, G-U-N-N-A. Mr. Williams and Mr. Kitchens are contractually obligated, and they frequently perform music together. Your Honor, any other conditions that this honorable court deems appropriate?
Now, many may consider this plea a setup. In many instances, the court will impose lengthy probation sentences to defendants with strict stipulations as leverage to later distribute harsh prison sentences for those who violate. This is often done when courts fail to fully prosecute defendants on initial charges. Defendants will usually accept these pleas out of desperation to be free, as in Thug's case.
All right, special conditions of your probation. After 48 hours from your release, you are to stay away from the metro Atlanta area, and that's defined by the U.S. Census Bureau. It may change, but you can look that up anytime to figure out what that is. For the first 10 years of your probation, subject to the following exceptions, you are permitted to be in the metro Atlanta area to attend any wedding, funeral, or graduation from high school, college, or graduate school of any of your immediate family members. And immediate family members is defined the same way that you all were contemplating it when you were negotiating. You can get here up to 24 hours prior to any such event, and you need to leave within 48 hours after any such event. In addition, during each year of your probation, I'm going to require that you come to the metro Atlanta area and make a live anti-gang and anti-gun violence presentation 4 times a year, each year of your probation, at a grade school, a middle school, a boys or girls club, anything like that, that type of group. And if you want to, that presentation can include a benefit concert, and these presentations may count towards your required community service hours, which I'm going to impose, that during each year of your probation, you perform 100 hours of community service. You are, and this is required by the fact that there's a gang conviction. You shall not knowingly have contact of any kind or character with any other member or associate of any criminal street gang. Exception to that, if your brother is a member of any street gang, I hope you talk him into getting out of it. Quantavious Greer, and then also Sergio Kitchens, as long as you are contractually obligated to him. That is going to include anybody who is named in this indictment, except as absolutely necessary to conduct the lawful business of your musical career, and to any extent that the state is not agreeing to the exception for Mr. Kitchens. In the event that that part is not enforceable because it is only a portion of a special condition, I'm going to provide that that be severable from the rest of this, and I'll put some case cites in the Senate sheet for that. You are in no way to promote any criminal street gang or any criminal street gang activity, including on any social media platform. You are not to utilize any hand signs, terminology, or language that promotes any criminal street gang. You are not to participate in any criminal street gang activity. You are not to knowingly engage in any contact with any of the victims that are listed in this indictment or with any of their family members. And you may not have in your possession or with arm's reach any kind of a firearm, because you're going to be a convicted felon. And that is, except I know that you have security and you need security. You can be within arm's reach of a firearm that is in the possession of either licensed law enforcement or licensed security personnel that are in your security detail or anybody that you're performing with. You are to submit to random drug screens and not use any drugs unless they are prescribed for you by a licensed physician. You are to execute a Fourth Amendment waiver that will permit the search of your person, residence, vehicles, and electronics for any firearms, any criminal street gang paraphernalia, or any illicit drugs. And as I mentioned, with regard to one of the first of your co-defendants from this trial, at least since I've been involved, to plead guilty, our Uniform Superior Court rules instruct and provide that it is absolutely proper for a judge to grant leniency in sentencing when, quote, the interests of the public and the effective administration of criminal justice are served, unquote. And I think that this plea is in the interest of the public and in the interest of effective administration of justice. Have been trying to ensure that, to the extent I can, this trial also abides by that. It's been challenging at certain times. I find your plea to be freely, knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily entered with an understanding of the consequences, and I accept it as such. I also need to inform you that your attorneys were going to represent you through either the last day of this term of court or 30 days from now, whichever is later, and any of the filings that were mentioned that need to be filed within that time, they would file on your behalf unless they are permitted to withdraw from representing you before that time. I am not going to impose the conditions suggested by your council about the benefit concerts and the donations to the sheriff's office, but I certainly strongly encourage you to do those things and to do and continue to do things that benefit your community and especially help young people to stay out of criminal trouble.